Over the past few weeks, I've been working on my Seeker build. That's a healer with the wand and longbow. So in this video, I want to cover my theory crafted builds for tier 2. This is based on the actual healing formula, of which there'll be a link in the video description below. And since my previous video, I have updated it a little bit to make it more accurate and to show you how you can easily confirm in game across multiple different skills. But this ultimately allows us to compare multiple builds versus each other and find out which is actually the best in terms of raw healing output. Now, I've done my research as well to find out what actual skills work, along with getting some experience here and there in like 2-star dungeons, some trials, but nothing as far as say tier 15s just yet. Ideally, I'll get my skills a bit higher leveled. But I'll talk you through what skills I recommend using based on my experience thus far, and I'll be sure to continue to update you as my experience improves, as in tier 2 I do fully intend to flesh out a full healer build in order to complete upwards of the highest level of PvE content in this game. Now, these builds are PvE centric, so just be aware if you do want to run into PvP content, you will have to change some things, as you will want to focus a bit more on survivability so you aren't just dying in a flash and then not being able to actually heal anybody. In PvE, it's a lot more of a controlled environment and you only need a certain amount of survivability, and the rest is just trying to make sure your teammates stay alive through all the mechanics, even if they fat finger so many of those Q blocks. So let's quickly have a look at the certain skills I recommend, and ultimately it's all this along with these specializations for wand and these for longbow. You can switch a few things around, but first let's cover what these skills are actually used for. You've got your flash wave, which you ideally want to charge up fully and then just hit as many allies as possible. Then you give them this neat heal over time, which when your build is particularly leveled, this could be in the thousands. We do have decisive sniping here and touch of despair, and that's simply to put the curse on the target, and then you can use your decisive sniping to just deal a bit of damage, but also you give a heal. You saw there what 1300 to the nearest ally, which could be usually your tank or a melee damage dealer who take a bit more damage, and the combination is based on vampiric contract, giving you a heal equal to a portion of the damage you dealt to that cursed target. So that's just that combo. One of your main clutch heals is swift healing. You can cast this 3 times on a target and you heal for an absolute ton. And then you have Fountain of Life, and this is just really good multi-target heal. You ideally want everybody standing it, try and put it in a convenient position, and you just heal everybody for those ticks up to 16 as it lasts 8 seconds, and you also give them a whole bunch of mana back. Then you have your invincible wall, which you can sometimes change the specialization. Say you didn't need to shield everybody, you could just have it for the tank specifically, but even then I feel it's just not that big of a shield that it's going to help the tank much, so you're better off just waiting and using it to protect everybody when say they have to take a Q block. You give them somewhere around 2000 shield to 3000 shield on a decent build, and if they say fail to Q block, this can help them survive. Then you have Deadly Marker and Blitz. These two are a huge combination. Deadly Marker will basically give an absolute ton of cooldown reduction to your team whenever they attack the target. Blitz allows you to reset the cooldown of your recently used ability, so it can be Deadly Marker again, and you can ultimately get like 2 Deadly Markers on the target. This in PvE is massive, and you'll see many longbow users doing that, and it's pretty much a must-have in PvE. But keep in mind you can use Blitz to say refresh the cooldown of even Fountain of Life to be able to use it a second time, and many of your other abilities too. So there's flexibility in that. Then you have your Valorous Barrier and your enchanting time. Both of these you can change the functionalities a little bit. For example, in some cases you can have time for punishment to reduce the skill damage resistance of the boss to then increase the effective damage of your entire team. And then Valorous Barrier, you can sometimes change it to have Blessed Barrier to then just protect the tank a bit more, or even an ally. If it's daytime, this is a huge increase to their healing received, so you could pop this on them before you need to heal them back to full. Particularly useful on high HP tanks, but again, it has to be daytime in order for them to gain the incoming healing effect from this. Alternatively, you can also have target expanded, so now it's an area, and then anybody within that area gains that boost, but it's a little bit less effective than the original against just one target. Again, can help save a group against certain mechanics. So you will switch between those depending on the situation, and Valorous Barrier is just a huge max damage boost to one target. That's the same with Enchanting Time, so you use both of these to buff up the highest damage dealer in the group. Then you have Nature's Blessing. Very simply a nice boost to the mana regen of your team. It's also going to be able to remove weaken effects and boost health regen. You'll pretty much just cast it when it's off cooldown. And then you have Clay's Salvation, which is a very nice heal along with a cleanse ability here. And you can also have the option to change it to Janus Rage, and that ultimately boosts your entire team's damage by 6%. And this is also a huge damage boost. If you're a newer healer, maybe you want to have that clutch heal for the entire team, and thus Clay's Salvation can be useful in those cases. It's ultimately what you're comfortable with. Same with Valorous Barrier. Maybe you want to have a Blessed Barrier to help actually heal the team. And finally, your passives. Well, there's not much better options than this. Significant boost to skill heal, recovery, and Devoted Shield is a nice clutch shield for yourself. Then we jump to our gear options. So again, I use this heal formula to ultimately find out what setup of stats will work the best to maximize that healing output. This is, for example, on Fountain of Life. My max heal is nearly 1,300 per tick, so that's healing for 16 times that amount. That's absolutely crazy. You easily heal everybody to full. But the different builds that I've created for tier 2 are all here. One of them is based on the Elder set, so this is simply going to give you a boost to skill damage over time, which is kind of irrelevant to us, but the 30% skill heal when you get the 4-piece set is absolutely huge. The issue, however, is accessibility. Getting 4 pieces of the set will be expensive, especially in the beginning of the game, because 2 of them are field boss drops from the new field bosses. So that price will be well into the thousands for these boots, of which I recommend. The weapons are super easy to get. The Overture is from just random enemies in the open world, and the bow, the Lunar Arc, is just from the Abyss dungeons. Again, you can see here where those certain armor pieces are coming from, but the chest piece, the Florification Curse uniform, that's going to be from a new 3-star dungeon. The cloak, however, is something that's going to be very inaccessible, and as per my description, you simply just switch that over to the Silver Fur cloak. You don't lose out on any real amount of healing. You look at the math and it's a 0.47% difference. So that's like barely anything and not worth the cost of, yes, the slightly better cloak. And as for the accessories, well, none of them are Nebula accessories, but the necklace is from a field boss, so is the bracelet, and also this Black Anvil ring. But then the Manor Sunset ring comes from a dungeon, and so does the belt. So this build is not exactly the most accessible. The boots and 3 accessories from field bosses, and the cloak's pretty easy to get if you just get the Silver Fur cloak, as that just comes from another dungeon. But you might want to look at different options then that are more budget friendly if you say didn't want to get those field boss items. Again, there's no arch boss here if you exclude the Stone Cold cloak, and no Nebula accessories. Nebula accessories are notoriously hard to obtain. So we do have other options, and we need to then compare the stats. So I favorited right here pretty much the main stats you want to be having on a healer, and you can see with this setup right here, you have over 1,000 magic crit, over 860 magic heavy attack, over 500 skill damage boost, and over 169% skill heal. You also get over 80% buff duration, over 47% cooldown speed, over 24,000 max mana, nearly 20,000 max health. It will be over that in random queues, and 344 skill damage resistance. If we compare that versus an alternative gear setup, you can see now the stat change, but this build becomes a little bit more accessible. You're running the World Tree set, and you're ultimately going with the 4 out of 4 to gain the cooldown speed. So now this build has a ton more cooldown speed at 57% versus 47%. Along with that, buff duration has also increased. If we simply go to build compare, you can exactly see the differences in terms of the stats. But in terms of a healing effectiveness, you can see, yes, it's a little bit better by 8.88% to have the full Elder set. Just more expensive again because it requires a field boss item. But I would say going the full World Tree set is still pretty viable. And again, you do get more cooldown and more buff duration. But there's another option, which is running the 2-piece Abyss set. So this simply gives you maximum damage. And then 2-piece Holy set, which gives you more buff duration. Again, you can see all of the stats here, and if we compare versus the Elder set, you can see again all of the stat differences. And if we look at it mathematically, yes, you will find the Elder set is nearly 11% more effective. So the best setup here is, yes, definitely the Elder set, but this Abyss plus Holy setup is also very easy to get, like the World Tree set, as it does not require any field boss gear. Again, you can just have the silver fur cloak instead of the stone cold cloak. Accessories, however, are still requiring field bosses on 3 of them, so we can change that up. We can go with the World Tree set, and this requires no field boss gear at all, or we could go with the Void plus Holy set. This is the Abyss plus Holy set, also requiring no field boss gear at all. And I've also had this build set up for, say, day 1 with no resonance and just blue runes. But again, a few weeks later, we will actually get those systems. Now, with missing those purple runes and resonance, you do lose quite a bit of effectiveness in terms of healing output, as you can see right here, nearly 25% difference. So you will have quite a bit of room to improve. But out of the 2 budget options here, it will still be better off to go with the full World Tree set. So in terms of what exact build to go for, that is going to be up to you. If you want to be spending a bit more on one field boss item, then go with ultimately the Elder setup, as it will net you the most amount of healing through that 30% heal increase. In terms of accessories, you don't necessarily have to go with these field boss ones. There are slightly less effective options that will just come from dungeons that are still very good, again, on these budget setups. You can read some of my notes here and just be careful of the mastery system, and on, say, a max out build, you only want to have 79 wisdom and no higher. That's because of this bow's effect, which gives you 10% more heal increase. But in terms of stat priorities, it's quite interesting. You look at the heal formula and you find that crit and heavy is not that important for heals. And so getting a solid baseline on your damage, not just gunning for maximum, is the better way to go. So getting strength and perception is generally better than going for dex. Getting wisdom gives you all that mana, which ultimately gives you skill heal through your passive, so that is still a priority. But last thing I want to touch on is some potential PvP ideas. Again, I am no expert here, and I just wanted to have a look at what's possible with, say, the max Elder set. So let's say I'm a PvE healer mainly, but I want to touch on a little bit of PvP and see if I can be still somewhat effective. Well, if we end up stacking some endurance as per traits, along with resonance and some runes, we can achieve some decent results with just a few minor switches, like over 1,500 on all endurance right here, but it's not nearly as effective as going, say, full Vanguard. you end up with well over 2,000 on all endurances, which will give you a ton more survivability. And if we look at the difference between the two, it's not that much of a heal loss going full Vanguard, and you gain a ton more survivability. But in terms of the overall heal loss from a PvE setup to a PvP setup, it's around 14%. So it's also not that bad. So if you are wanting to focus mainly on PvP, there will be no harm healing in PvE content with a PvP setup. You'll still be highly effective. You will miss a bit in terms of, say, buff duration, cooldown speed, and overall skill heal, but you'll most likely still be able to get the job done fairly easily and comfortably with a decent group. To those of you who can't access quest logs so easily, here's a screenshot of the max out Elder set, the World Tree set, and the Abyss plus Holy set, or the Void plus Holy set. Then the more budget friendly options with, say, blue runes. This is the Elder set. Again, only the boots are from field bosses, everything else is pretty much from dungeons. Then the budget friendly World Tree set, and the budget friendly Void plus Holy set. But that's it for now. Hopefully my insights were somewhat helpful. Again, I am by no means an expert, and I'm sure I have some things to learn. Definitely feel free to leave your feedback below, and thanks all for watching. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.